Hi, it's Dwyer. It's October 15th, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, folks, I wasn't planning on making this video this morning, but this news is too interesting for me to pass up on the opportunity. You need to follow this story. You need to become acclimated to the names involved. This is a major moment for boxing. You have a promising guy who's one of the best in the sport. Right? I understand there are differing opinions. I know some fighters' camps have gone public with their opinions on his last performance. From this seat, this guy is one of the most promising guys in the entire sport. And he has now entered a new division that has some underrated names and very tough terrain. So 2 days ago, I put up a poll. Right? You can see this in my community section here online. The question I asked, as Jaron Ennis starts his quest at 154 pounds. And let's be clear here, he just beat the IBO champion in the weight class. I know there's a lot of talk, a lot of it's political, where people say, oh, should Jaron Ennis in his first fight in this new division have picked a more meaningful opponent? Folks, he picked a IBO champion in the division. First round KO. So the question I asked in the poll was, who is Jaron Ennis? Choice number one was the future of boxing. Big wins in multiple weight classes. This choice did not win the poll. 26% of you picked this choice. The choice that won the poll is will unify at 154. 36% of you picked that choice. The third choice was Napoleon, headed for his Waterloo at 154. 23% of you picked that choice. The fourth choice was has already peaked. 15% of you picked that choice. In other words, folks, the public is divided. You know, some believe, a little bit better than 1 in 4 believe he's the future of boxing. That's huge. A little bit more than a third believe he'll unify at 154. That's huge. A little bit less than 1 in 4 of you, 23%, believe he's headed for his Waterloo at 154. Let's go through some of the comments. Right, Travis Johnson, 7283, wrote, right now, Boots is Tank Davis. He got 6 thumbs up for that comment. You can decide for yourself whether that's positive or negative. Right, as I make this video, Tank is unbeaten. But as I make this video, Tank's last fight, in which he was heavily favored, Tank got a draw, and many people believe, let me raise my hand, that draw was a gift. Right? Kip Solani, 14, wrote, Boots is the next Deontay Wilder. Demetrius Andrade, Tank Davis, etc. Murdazaliev already called him out. That's a name you need to know. Murdazaliev, one of the champs at 154. right? Murtazaliev wants to welcome Boots to 154. Murtazaliev already called him out. There's also Ortiz in the division. Saul West, 8254, wrote, and let me point out, while there are certainly sites online for boxing that have many more viewers than mine, I would argue that there is no better subscriber group for boxing on YouTube than my subscribers. Right? This to me is the boxing hardcore. So Saul West, 8254, wrote, 154, unlike 147, has plenty of challenges for Ennis. That's my view. I agree with that statement. Right? And Dalby, 5178, wrote, one of the futures of the sport, hopefully. He might be. But he's going to have to show us. Right? Understand, not every division is equal. This one is a raging river. Right? IIG wrote, if he can get through Virgil, Bakram, right, Murtazaliev, and Fundora, another name you need to know, Sebastian Fundora, the towering Inferno. He's several inches taller than everyone else, and his idea of fighting you is to be right in front of you, leaning over the pocket, doling out punishment, daring you to try to punch up at him. Right? So, let me repeat this. If he can get through Virgil, Bakram, and Fundora, that would be a solid run at 154. Charlo and Madrimov would be good names on the resume too. My guess is that he stumbles somewhere down the line though. Understand, this writer didn't include another big name, Xander Zayas, nor did he include a Hall of Famer with only one loss to Manny Pacquiao, who himself has just decided to ride the river of this weight class, Keith Thurman. Let's continue, because these comments are great comments. Right? Just a couple of more. SP123, and I disagree with this comment. Jaron is the guy born a few years too late to make 8-figure paydays in boxing. He missed the HBO Showtime era that would have made him a superstar. He can beat anyone they put in front of him, but there's no one of note that would raise his profile or validate his resume. Let me just say, this author, Strong Views, apparently never heard of Riyadh season. Apparently doesn't realize that Turki Al-Sheikh is shining a light on weight classes outside of heavyweight. Isn't that what he just did with Terence Crawford and with Canelo? Right, folks? If Jaron Ennis is the top shelf, and he might be, folks, he's unbeaten as I make this video, with a huge knockout percentage and spectacular skills. Right? He's going through some tough names. Stanionis, there's a video here online where esteemed trainer Robert Garcia, Dan Rodriguez's trainer, openly talked before the Stanionis fight about how Stanionis was major competition for anyone. And folks, Stanionis did not go the distance with Boots. More importantly, Boots, while roaming around, while having back foot parts of that fight, beat Stanionis by going to his body in a fight in which Boots' back foot for much of the fight. Let me also say, too, that, apart from the fact that, folks, I don't believe there's ever been this much money in boxing. I also believe that HBO and Showtime, God bless both of them, were detrimental to the sport somewhat. Because in the 70s, people saw Ali, the heavyweight champ, on TV. The Ali-Leon Spinks heavyweight title fight was on TV. You knew who Ray Leonard was. Right? You get to the 80s, Marvin Hagler has a run. But it was on cable. And cable wasn't as widespread as, let's say, stuff is now. Right? We missed out on Mike McCallum, quite frankly. A lot of these guys were on cable too much. Let me say, too, that it's interesting that this author says he can beat anyone they put in front of him. My question is, at this division, folks, this is 154. Right? It's a jungle out there. Let me say, too, that we all should enjoy it while it lasts. Because certain guys shouldn't even be at 154. Right? There's even an open question, at least there is in my mind, as to whether Boots should be at 154. Virgil Ortiz has told you in interviews he's going to have to move up. Right? All I have to do is look at Sebastian Fundora and think to myself, wow, some dude who's 6'5", 6'6", and he's at 154 going up against world-class boxing opposition. Right? If I saw this on a basketball court, some dude 6'5", 154, I'd say, man, this brother needs a meal. And here he is in a, fighting sport where guys are trying to knock him out at 154. I look at Murtazaliev, another guy, taller than most, and you're saying, how's this guy at 154? Right? Xander Zayas. You look at his body and you say, wow, I get the feeling a lot of these guys are going to move up to 160 in time. Finally, you have Techno Lawyer. Now, I'm a lawyer myself. I'm just telling you that lawyers can be deluded. Right? I know that firsthand. Techno Lawyer, in one of the most loaded divisions in boxing, wrote, other than Virgil Ortiz, who is there for him? Not really his fault, but he's too good for his weight class right now. Folks, just understand, Boots has just gotten there. Right? This is the new guy in the neighborhood. Right? This is the new guy who comes up to you and says, hey man, where can I find a place to eat? Right? This is the new guy who comes over to you and says, hey player, where's the post office? Right? Murtazaliev, to greet him, is basically saying, Boots, let's have at it. Right, folks, understand. You have two schools of thought here. More than that, but we'll simplify to two schools. You have the school of thought that thinks of Boots as a Goliath, right? As Techno Lawyer puts it. Other than Virgil Ortiz, who's there for him? Right? Keep in mind, too, you have a whole group of fighter. Boachuk. I know Brandon Adams is his boogeyman. Sometimes that happens. Right? But nobody else has beaten Boachuk. Right? I know they want you to believe Virgil Ortiz, who Boachuk knocked down twice in a fight in which Boachuk was never dropped, beat him. Right? I'd question that. And I'm going off my own scorecard. Right? But understand, this is a division where they're looking at him and they don't see a Goliath. They see the new guy. They're thinking this guy doesn't know what he's gotten himself into. Right? So just understand here, on this poll, you have widely divergent comments, and you have 3 different options that got at least 23%. 3 different options. So let's enjoy this. This is a moment for boxing. I have Boots on my short list of the best in the sport pound for pound, right? A list that includes people like Crawford and Usyk, right? But recognize that, and I know Crawford has done a lot to destroy this thought process, but recognize that they do have weight classes for a reason, right? This is the guy on the boat headed for turbulence, right? Maybe he is a guy who can hop in the ring and beat a Sebastian Fundora. Maybe he's a guy who can hop in the ring. I notice Virgil Ortiz is mentioned a lot here by people, right? Are you certain Ortiz beats Erickson Lubin? Right? Lubin would go looking for Boots' body, folks. Right? Is Ennis a guy who can handle an Erickson Lubin? I remember the Keith Thurman-Danny Garcia fight. Danny's having a farewell fight. But I remember that fight. And as you were watching that fight, you looked at Thurman and you thought, wow, not only does this guy hit hard, but this guy's a craftsman, isn't he? Right? You can imagine. Thurman, who was scheduled to fight Sebastian Fundora. Understand, this is not only a competitive division. This is actually a division where people fight each other. Right? Lubin, Ortiz, Thurman, Fundora. Right? Fundora's already fought Lubin. Right? This is the division where guys are fighting people. Some excellent fighters haven't made the cut. Tim Tszyu. Right? So let's strap ourselves in. There is a possibility that Ennis is able to conquer the division. There is a possibility that somebody else conquers the division. Right? Let me just say, I know you have another new guy here, right? Xander Zayas. Here's what I know for certain. As great an athlete as Ennis is, and there's usually a gap in Ennis fights, right? He is a better athlete than most of the division. Well, not the division, but most of his opposition, right? He's new to the division. Reality will tell us whether that translates at 154, right? But just understand, Zayas is as good an athlete as Jaron Ennis is. Food for thought. Let me finally close by saying someone here in the comment section of this poll said that Janabek wants all of the smoke. Right, folks? I'll say this. If Ennis fights Janabek, I'd be on the Janabek side of the play. Janabek, of course, is the top floor at 160. Right? I would take Janabek over Carlos Adames. Right? Tell us about it here. Let me say I would put Chris Eubank among the elites at 160. But Father Time waits for no one. And Eubank, who did spank Conor Benn in the first fight, right? His body showed its age after that fight when Eubank suffered from a bout of dehydration in a match in which he was not knocked down. Right? So let's just say boxing has moving parts. Eubank, who used to fight at 168, may need to go back to 168. We'll save that division for another day. Let's just say I am shocked in that division that a star fighter, Diego Pacheco, has broken with his longtime trainer, David Benavidez Sr. Right? Keep an eye on these divisions, but definitely take a very hard look at 154, right? Ennis had a great run at 147. This is a different campus, right? To be big man on campus here, let's just say his plight there is just in the early innings. We'll see if he makes the cut. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. The poll is ongoing, right? A little bit over 200 people have voted in the poll so far. I'll leave it up. All of these polls, you'll see past polls on the page as well. Just recognize that the polls are just part of the story. You definitely want to look at the comments. Thanks for stopping by.